Did we finally have a good Monaco race? Will Charles ever lift his Monaco curse? And why are the FIA so scared of water? All these questions answered and more on Final Sector's race breakdown of the Monaco Grand Prix.
Very good.
My name is Michael, as always, joined by Kyle to break down what was actually a decent Monaco race. It's many years since I've been able to say that. I want to start by saying a couple of things. First of all, big apologies for not releasing a preview for this one. Last week was a bit crap, particularly for me, but both of us, it was just not. It's not a good week for us. We sort of just kept delaying before I just decided to kind of pull the plug and realize it just wasn't worth it. By the time it was like Saturday night and it was like 2 hours before qualifying, I'm like, I'm in bed, like nearly passed out. I'm like, maybe I could record it and edit it and get it out by qualifying, but it's like, is it worth it? Not really. So
yes, what's the audience?
Yeah, so if we want to go predictions, I was going to go Leclerc anyway. Ooh, big.
Yeah, I had the same. Yeah. It's on my notes.
So,
nice.
But we'll write that one off for this week. So, but yeah, so it was Monaco. I was expecting to talk quite a lot about like free practice and qualifying. I made a lot of notes for that and expecting the race just to be one line saying Monaco.
Yes.
But it turns out weather played a very, very big factor in this weekend. But I want to start. I'm going to sort of break it down event by event because it has a real chronological aspect to it for this one.
Yes.
But yeah, we'll start with free practice. The couple of notes that I had from the practice sessions is the first big one is that the Mercedes, while they weren't porpoising, they had severe bouncing, particularly through that swimming pool chicane. That car looked a real handful. I guess because of the super stiff suspension, maybe just because of the way they're running the car, they were just more prone to it. But I don't know, that car looked absolute shite.
For what it's worth, everyone seemed to comment saying it was a little rougher of a ride than they expected, but particularly the radio of the two Mercedes was very much, this is unbearable. I think, was it Hamilton was even asking you for extra padding and everything like that?
Something,
like it was apparently so bad.
It was not good. I don't know how you could like it was so visible, even from like wide shots from like far away. You could just see it like through this tiny section through this fast swimming pool chicane section. I'm just like, how they're not putting that into the wall is beyond me.
Oh yes,
it was unreal. So yeah, that was a big talking point through the practice sessions. The other big talking point was the fact that Max wasn't really there, and he sort of wasn't there more or less all weekend. Perez had the upper hand on him on just about every single session. Was either with Max or faster than him. Was able to get a handle on the car through the streets of Monaco much better than Max did. So Max was always starting on the back foot, and there was always this question through the free practices, like, well, is it now Charles v Max? Because they Charles v Perez, not Charles v Max, because they were the two that were sort of battling back and forth for those top times. So Perez very, very comfortable here. As obviously, if you've watched the race, you know he went on to win it. So woohoo!
What do you
good
mean?
for Perez. Oh god, I've spoiled it.
I thought this was just a quality breakdown.
And then the last thing is something we'll probably touch on, maybe not this video, but I kind of do want to touch on potentially in the podcast up this weekend. But MGUK failures for both Mick and Valtteri during the free practice sessions, which is more Ferrari power unit issues. It's that Ferrari power unit has had a lot of issues the last couple of races, the last couple of weekends. It hasn't really affected the Ferrari team as of yet, but surely they've got to be worried. I think it's the second issue that Valtteri's had in a free practice with a Ferrari power unit or Alpha or something. Like, I feel like Alpha just have a lot of issues with their power unit. I don't know if it's just the way they're running the car, but and maybe that's all it is. Maybe it's just their setups that make the power unit a bit more fragile.
The packaging or whatever,
something like that. But it is cause for concern for Ferrari in that power unit in terms of reliability at the moment. But any other notes you had from free practice, or you happy to move on to quali?
No, we can move on from there. I think that sums it up.
Beauty. Moving on to qualifying. Qualifying was it's always good at Monaco. It's always kind of the highlight. You always go into the weekend thinking Saturday is extraordinary, and then Sunday is sleep, and you go you just pass out after lap 1, and you realize that's the result. Qualifying was particularly interesting in the sense that Q1 was a lot cooler in terms of the track temperature. There was a lot of track evolution. Drivers were having to do multiple laps on the same set of tires, and they were just getting faster and faster and faster.
And all drivers as well. You'd see the top runners went through, and then some of the lower field went through, and then they were crushing them by like half a second. You're like, what? And then they'd come back through. So it was one of those sessions where everyone needed to be out there. And it was Monaco, so a double whammy, that crowded streets and everyone trying to get a clean lap in and not bin it. And
it was quite very crowded. It's definitely very busy. There was the red flag thrown up during Q1 after Tsunoda hit the barrier. Still don't know why that was a red flag. It seems, again, these stewards this year seem to have a bit of a happy trigger finger for the red flag. Seems to be another instance of it where they just threw it. There was no debris on the track. There was no, obviously, Tsunoda didn't stop on track. There was no real reason to red flag it. It just seemed,
there wasn't a reason to red flag. I think the case is where if a marshal has a judgment call to throw up a physical red flag and it's seen, then basically that goes to a track-wide thing. It doesn't have to be like checked off or whatever, right? Because they say, look, if someone on the scene is throwing it up for safety, then that's how it works, right? It probably does seem like he was a little trigger happy. I mean, it was a fair knock, to be fair, with the barrier, and some stuff did kind of fly off. So maybe he merely thought, oh, Tsunoda's going to stop right in the middle of the chicane. Well, of course, I got to red flag this because we've got to get the car out of there, right? But then he ended up trundling on anyway. And it was ironic considering we had the red flag, and then they said, oh, Tsunoda's hit the wall, as they showed Tsunoda going into the garage. We went, okay, but he obviously hasn't hit it that bad if he's being wheeled into the garage. It was a bit like, and then everyone went, is it a Ferrari? What's going on? Can we see the Ferrari cars, please? We need to know it's not them.
Exactly. It was very, very strange, but regardless, it left us with 2.5 minutes at the end of Q1, which is, again, Monaco, tight track, the track evolution, everyone obviously wants to get back out because these last flying runs are very, very important. And then we had the gamesmanship in the end of the pit lane again, which I thought last race we had some kind of discussion on not doing that, and drivers all of a sudden started doing that again this race.
I don't know if it's because last race, because it wasn't the rule going into last race. I think they started to do it, and they made a call to say, hey, by the way, from now on you can't do this. But then I don't know if they carried that forward. There seem to be a few themes of that, which we might go on later as well, where a few almost race notes from previous races weren't carried forward here, particularly some notes on pit exits and things like that apparently also weren't carried forward. So this could have been one of those, but again, it's not helping our case for last year, where we're like, the FIA is going to clean everything up, and this weekend, again, as we get into a few more points, it's kind of like, what's going on here?
They're all over the place at the moment. But anyway, so we had 2.5 minutes. I think just about everyone got to the line in time. I think only Hamilton, Gasly, Zhou, and Bottas didn't get to the line in time. So it was very, very costly for Gasly and Zhou in particular, who were both out in Q1, and both of them absolutely could have gone a lot faster. Given
they just
their
didn't
teammates.
get a go at it, right? So you really don't know.
Gasly, I think, missed it by about a second or half a second, as they showed on the replays. So, it's frustrating, especially when, again, it's like literally the previous race they were told, mid-session, like, no, you can't keep doing this. And then they literally the next race, they go back to like coming out of the pit lane. They're like, I'm going to slow down.
Yes.
Not enough time. Okay, now I can go. It's like, come on. They need to implement some sort of rule for that, rather than just like throwing it up when it gets bad. Because the drivers are just going to keep abusing it, and every time it comes up. So anyway,
it's all well and fair if you have let's say, for example, in IndyCar, we have a super wide pit lane and they encourage people to race out of the pit lane. Hey, that's fine because then people can do what they want. But here, when you have a single file, everyone's stuck there, you can't then just go, I'm going to leave the pit exit. Oh, 30-second penalty, see ya.
Yep.
So,
yeah,
they could just say, hey, first in best dressed, but then it's like, ugh, like, come on, just, I don't know.
Yeah.
We've had this gone for so long now. Minimum lap time, maximum lap time. Just clean it up. Come on.
Yeah. Just put something. Do something. Do anything.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so we get to Q2. The track temperatures start to rise. I think the sun comes out from out over the clouds, and track's temperature rises by like 6 or 7 degrees or something. So pretty significant. To the point where Hamilton's actually complaining of his rear tires getting way too hot by the end of the lap. Which, given that they could do multiple laps in Q1, it seems like that track temperature differential was quite huge. And then Vettel makes it into Q3 for Aston, and both Alpines, I think, make it through as well. Was probably the biggest, two of the biggest stands up. But yeah, Vettel into Q3 was huge, considering again that Aston is obviously not where they want to be right now.
We only have one race to base off the new kit and looked pretty poor, and even in practice it seemed meh. And his teammate got knocked out in Q1, right? So again, kudos to him picking up the slack, considering his poor form recently. Good on you.
Yeah, absolutely. Ricciardo out in Q2 as well. He's still having a bit of a struggle. I think that's something we are going to talk about. It's a topic that I want to bring up on the podcast. So if you want us to hear a little bit more about the whole Ricciardo chat that's going on, tune into the podcast coming out this weekend on Spotify. And both the Alfa Romeos, I think, not Alfa, both the Alfa Romeos are out by Q2. So Bottas goes out as well, which surprised me, given the fact that their strong suit is supposed to be low speed corners and like traction in low speed corners.
And their chassis,
their chassis.
And Bottas going into the weekend, and a lot of pundits are going, hey, Bottas might pull out something special here, considering he's been doing really well so far, and yet this track, he's always liked it and felt comfortable there, and the car should have suited, and yet it just didn't come together, and you kind of went, oh, that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. I think, I don't know if he might have gotten unlucky in qualifying. It's hard to keep track of every driver.
You don't know if he got unlucky or if everyone else just extra nailed it right. There's so many little things, and especially because these are new cars, right? It's we can't just say, oh, but that car's good on a low speed and that on a high speed, like with with certainty. So it's it's tricky to say, but certainly it was tight out there. It was hard to predict in that lower midfield who was going to get through.
100%, yeah. Then we move on to Q3. Q3, Leclerc takes the pole position on the first run, 0.2 seconds faster than all three of his competitors in Sainz, Perez, and Max. So he's like
so comfortable,
clear favorite, very, very comfortable. Yeah, and then the track temps cool again as the cloud comes over and the track temps start to go down again. So it was very weird qualifying in terms of finding the right window for the tires.
Yeah.
But the biggest news to come out of that qualifying is obviously Perez getting a bit sideways out of, Portier? Is that what the corner's called? Going under the straight. And slides into the wall, gets the yellow flags, but Sainz behind him can't react quick enough, tries to get on the inside to try and avoid him, but in doing so has to hit the brakes, lose the rear, goes straight into Perez, and then causes a big old traffic jam. Then you randomly pan to Alonso, who's also in the wall at Mirabeau. And it's just like...
They only panned him for about half a second. Yeah, it's just like... Moment. You were like, did I imagine that?
Yes. Also, Alonso's dead. Back to this one. Yeah. So obviously everyone pushing a bit hard on that final lap. I think Alonso actually said it was just a mistake on his part. Perez's was very, very low speed. It was kind of an odd one. I don't know if he said it was like if it was his mistake kind of thing, or whether or not he just, I don't know what it was there, but yeah, it seemed
like a kind of just over that limit, right? You see his onboard and it looks fine, and then suddenly the rear goes and you kind of think it's one of those instances where if it wasn't Monaco, you would have just seen someone slip out a bit and then go on, but because there's a wall there, well then he clunks right into it and GG.
So did end up ruining pretty much everyone else's run behind him, as obviously they threw the red flag. I don't think anyone completed their run. No,
because they're all kind of on runs together.
That's it, yeah. Which is kind of a shame in the sense that Leclerc was out in front. He wasn't affected because he was ahead of Perez, but he was on a fucking monster lap.
What was it? 0.4 something ahead?
4 tenths up by the time the red flag was shown, and he was just getting into the swimming pool chicane, I think it was, when it was thrown. Or like just coming around that that left turn.
He kind of done the hard bit, then he just had the safe bit to finish off at the end, right?
So, that... Unless he would have crashed into the wall himself, I think he was going to get pole anyway.
Yes. Well, even if he did crash into the wall like he has in the past, right? The argument is whether... Like, I think the point is that even though he had the red flag, the top 4 probably would have stayed similar anyway from what we'd seen so far. I mean, Max seemed to hop on and say that he really could beat on a flyer, but then again... As we said, the tracks are cooling and that, which made it a bit harder. And yes, I mean, Leclerc was flying, but I think he was just in another zone of his own and on another level. Well, I think that Red Bull on limit was a bit slippy in that. So, arguably, there might have been a bit of a change-up behind him, but then also arguably he kind of went, but this actually doesn't set up that bad a grid order, at least for the top areas as well.
So, there you go. It was, Ferrari lockout, Leclerc Sainz, as they seem to be doing... most races at the moment. They just seem to have a very fast car for qualifying. And then Perez in P3 ahead of Verstappen. While Verstappen was in that better lap, Perez had the better banker, so was able to keep that spot going in. Again, seemed more comfortable than Verstappen all through the weekend. So fair play to him. Let's go to the race. There's a lot to talk about here. Of the points that I've sort of got...
Where do we start? Where are you going? I'm curious what point of day you were going to start at.
Well, I'm going to start... I'm just going to talk about the... Okay, let's go... The points that I've got, let's go point number 1. And that's the start or lack thereof is the point I've got. The race didn't technically start for, I think... a little over an hour before the race finally got going. The initial start... So what was happening is it was 3 o'clock local time is when it was supposed to start. About 10 minutes before, so like 2:50-ish, 10 minutes before it was supposed to start, there was some light drops, which started to get a bit heavier, and everyone was obviously excited. Like, ooh, this could be a rainy start. The FIA initially delayed the start time to 9 minutes past 3, based on the fact that they were... Okay, I've got quotes here, because I agree with most of their decisions, except for the initial one. But the FIA were monitoring a severe downpour approaching the circuit and suspended, and it was done suspended the race start. It was done for safety reasons, in consideration that there had been no wet running this weekend. So they delayed the start because it might rain heavier.
See, you know what's stupid, though? They said that, and then after the race, they also came out to say, oh, by the way, we also couldn't do the start procedure because there was electrical problems on the grid.
Yep.
But they didn't say that initially for whatever reason. So, of course, everyone's going, well, it's starting to rain and they're delaying it. Oh, they're being a bunch of pussies, right? And even the commentators, right? But then allegedly it came out that they initially also were trying to delay it because they were trying to fix these issues that meant apparently the start lights wouldn't go on. And of course, well, that's a bit of an issue if you can't have your start lights go on. So apparently that was part of it as well, but I don't know why that wasn't disclosed and they kind of came out with this weather thing initially. And you went, okay, fair enough, but...
So from my understanding, the power outage didn't happen till after that point?
They made that call, okay.
So... I'm going to try and run through everything in the order that I think it happened from the minimal research that I did. Yes. But yeah, so roughly 10 minutes was 10 minutes after the start was when they were supposed to start, as they were monitoring this situation. It's like, oh, there could be a big downpour. I don't know why they couldn't just get the race going then and let the teams figure it out.
I did think of another point, actually. I remember...
Okay.
Someone was saying was that because on the Monaco grid, because it's so restricted, it's really hard to bring stuff on and off the grid if you suddenly need it. And I think they also mentioned they also did it because they gave time for the teams if they wanted to go get their wet tires.
So,
right? Mentioning that too.
That was the second delay. The start was delayed from the 309 to the 316, and that delay was because of that was to give the teams time to change the wet weather tires. But that was the second delay. Yes. Fair enough. That second delay, completely okay with. The first delay, let them start on the tires they have because it was fine. They decided the tires. If the teams decided they made, or the drivers decided they made it a bad choice, fine. Bring them into the pits and let them change the tires. Let them live with the decision they made. I don't understand why the start time was delayed by 10 minutes because something bad might happen. And it's like, I don't really get that part. Everything that came after it, I get and understand. Like, I get it. That first 10 minutes delay, I'm I don't know why they didn't just start the race.
You don't know why the first 10 minutes call was, by the way, we could see something big might be coming. For the sake of not having everyone die on an out lap, let's give the teams a chance to 5 extra minutes to decide if they want to put on wet tires or not, right?
Yeah.
And considering it as well, where I might have started was on the grid walk, where Brundle started asking a few drivers. He was saying, do you feel spots of rain? And half the drivers were saying, our radar says there's no rain. And other drivers were saying, our radar says there's a downpour. And everyone was like, what? Why do half the teams think there's a different thing? So, as you say, it's the fact that was the initial decision. It seemed to be like, with everything else going on, but that's the kind of first delay they made it. It was like, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
anyway, obviously that second delay, it was another 7 minutes. That was to let them change to the wet weather tires. Fair enough. Obviously, they need to give them that time, especially if it is now. They can't let drivers start on. I think there was still people on slick tires at that point. There was no way they were going to let them start on slick tires.
And as we said, there was apparently really hard for mechanics to get their gear, and they didn't want to say, well, stuff that you didn't run over first, so bad luck, Johnny. It's like, well, no, hold on.
Reminder that Jos Capito is a hero for wheeling tires with his team. According to Ted Kravitz, he's a true hero.
It really was all hands on deck. Good on
him. So. They went out behind the safety car initially after they got all those tires on. The rain got considerably heavier.
The first lap looked okay, and then you saw the second lap, and you went, "Oh dear."
Yeah, okay.
There's and then on the radio, all the drivers that seeded quite confident were kind of like, "Hold on here, maybe this isn't a. We might need to wait a bit, fellas."
And then they did delay the start, and after looking at that second lap, the first lap I was sitting there like, "Come on, we need to get racing. They've driven in the wet before. What's the point of having wet tires?" And the second lap, they came around that back section again through towards the swimming pool section. I'm just like, okay, that's a bit wetter than I thought it was. So, and then they did delay the start. And from my understanding, once they sort of came into the pit lane, that's about when the power outage happened, which then caused the starting systems to fail, which also sort of contributed to the really long wait time before. It's also why they could only do rolling starts from then on, despite the fact that particularly that second. After the second red flag, they absolutely could have done a standing start.
Yes, as part of the new rules on that,
But the reason they couldn't is they were unsure whether or not the systems would work properly for a standing start, so they just used the rolling starts just to be safe. Which, after the fact, when I read that, I'm just like, okay, you know what, fair enough. They better to be safe than get under the start and then nothing happens. They're just like, all right, let's go around again. Like, it's they don't want that. So, so after an hour and 10 minutes, they finally do get going. The track is they do start on all wets because if they're starting behind the safety car, I didn't know this was a rule actually, but if they're starting behind a safety car, it's a rule that they have to start on the full wets. On the formation lap, or that first lap before they got started, both Stroll and Latifi, the Canadian duo,
F1 specialist,
and they say I'm slow, eh? Stroll and Latifi both have some minor collisions with the wall on their outlaps. Both separate instances. I should point that out. They're both completely separate, but they both go into the wall and both end up having to pit to fix whatever damage they have. But then we finally get going, and it's not long before, and this is my second point, finally, actually get to the second point of the race, and that is the switch to inters, which turns out happened very quickly for a couple of drivers. Schumacher, Gasly, and Latifi, all, I think it was on effectively the second lap of the race, they came in for those intermediate tyres. And given how Latifi was a weird one, because he just literally went off on those full wets on the formation lap, on the full wets, and he comes in for the intermediates. I thought it was a bit of a weird choice, but
it was very much a case of we're in last.
We might as well try something.
Try it. If we skid off the track, who cares?
Yeah, and I think Gasly was the same. He was starting in 17th or something.
Because he was so far down, and he knew.
Yeah, and turns out to be what would have been a very, very good choice for Gasly. But those first couple of laps on those intermediates was a little scary. Those tyres were. It was definitely a few laps before enters for sure. But in terms of the start, in very Monaco fashion, there was pretty much no change for the lead or like any positions at all. I think maybe Ocon got a position from what I could see, but the only positions that happened were because Schumacher, Gasly, and Latifi pitted and everyone went ahead of them. That was all I could see. But the interesting thing was seeing how those drivers on the intermediates were going to go. And by lap 6, Gasly set the fastest lap of the race. So it was
the action, man.
It was about 4 laps of real sketchy driving. Like every time they caught to him, it was not inters. It didn't look like it. And then just started getting this immense amount of grip and just started setting these huge, huge lap times. And that sort of set in motion what would be an interesting tyre strategy for the race. But we had Vettel and Tsunoda came in lap 7 for inters, I guess reacting to the fact that Gasly was the fastest person on track. It ended up that the inters in general were just starting to go faster than the front runners on the wet tyres. So your Ferraris and Red Bulls by lap 8, they were going faster than the front runners. The biggest thing was the intermediate runners, while they were faster, they couldn't overtake. Track position is still really, really important at Monaco, which is why I think a lot of those teams out in front were just trying to hold off as long as they could, because you don't really want to give up track position. So,
and the other kind of thing was because the rain was drying quite rapidly, but it was still, as in the rain was slowing down, but it was still quite cool. Was that then it was a case of we started here saying, well, do we go this wet into dry, or do we try cut out that middleman, right, and try to predict that? And then a bit of the mind games of the undercutter. Will it overcut, or is it too early or too late? Or what traffic am I going to go into? Am I going to be behind back markers, which turned out to be relevant?
Yes,
it was very interesting.
Yeah, but by lap 13, there was a dry line forming. A few of the drivers made a choice. Well, the first driver to come in I was going to say of relevance, but maybe that's a bad word. Of the front runners that were sort of romping out ahead of those 4, the first to come in was Perez, and he, I think, responded to Hamilton coming in to inters, I think on lap 16, I think it was. I think by this stage, Sainz made a comment on the radio saying, we'll just go straight to hards. Like, we'll just wait. We'll go straight to hards. I guess he saw the dry line, realized if we can just stay out, use the last of this wet tire, go straight onto the hards, completely skip out a pit stop, then they'll be better off. Turns out, we'll talk about it a little bit later, it did work quite well for him, as it turns out. But Perez, obviously came in for the inters, comes out just ahead of Russell in P5, and I think just ahead of Russell, which I think was very, very important for his race. If he ended up getting stuck behind Russell, I don't think he wins the race. So, but yeah, Sainz decided to stay out on the wets, waiting for the dries, as I said. And it's not till I think a couple of laps later that Leclerc and Verstappen both pit. They come in the same lap for the inters. So I think it's either 1 or 2 laps after Perez does. And as it turns out, that was a lap or two too late, as Perez ended up taking the lead. he was catching signs super quickly on those inters. It was turning out that those inters were the tire to be on. And I kind of felt a little bad for Sainz because I thought at this stage I'm just like, Sainz is on the wrong strategy. Like there's no way this is the right strategy. But I don't know, that it was sort of a bit all over the place, but it seemed like the progressive wet to inters to slicks was going to be the way to go. But it did end up working out for Sainz. We'll talk about a bit, but I don't know if you saw anything in the wet stages of the race that you found a bit interesting before I move on to the switch to the dries. But
I don't know. I don't really remember. I think I was just kind of going with it, and I couldn't really make any prediction. I think it was exciting that we didn't just see the four of them kind of come in line of stone doing the same thing. And again, I think that although it was drying quickly and people going to inters, it almost seemed like after it was almost like it was on like a 2-lap window to go on that. And it almost seemed like, as you say, that kind of staying out like Sainz was intending to. And we should say as well at that point is they were basically saying to Sainz, hey, what do you think? Should we, get these wets off? And he was like, no. And then they were like, come on, man, let's. And he was like, no. Like, come on, guys, I know what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
So that was interesting too, where you'd think, that the team would, know the best strategy, and yet Sainz is very much there going, no. Trust me here, guys. It was there was a lot going on. I kind of was just watching, going, I'm trying to follow here. I don't know. I don't know.
I made a lot of notes, but it was still so hard to just like keep on track of everything. The other thing I guess that was slightly relevant is the Ocon Hamilton collision into turn 1. That obviously comes into play a bit later as Ocon does get a 5-second penalty.
Yeah, Hamilton was hounding Ocon, and Ocon was doing all right. We saw it was. Again, talk about Monaco race direction when nothing happens, and yet we still only see half of it, right? We saw the first time when Hamilton tried to go around the outside and kind of got... Was it outside or inside? That he... They had an incident into T1, which we saw on camera where they came together, and you kind of went a bit... that was maybe a bit ambitious. Yeah. And then you heard about another incident where Hamilton was like, he put me in the wall, and we thought, well, that's not what we saw, because there was no wall. And then I didn't end up seeing it until... I didn't end up seeing it until after the race, and he actually kind of did have a bit of a crunch into the wall, which is how he got...
I didn't even see that one at all.
Yeah, I only saw it uploaded after, because people had to go and find it, because they didn't show it at all, and that was arguably the more interesting contact and crunch there.
Yeah. But yeah, Ocon gets a 5-second penalty for that, not 5 place. It ends up putting him out of the points. He had some choice words to say about that as well. Yes. But at the end of the day, that you have to respect the penalties that come through. Again, I didn't see that second one. Maybe that one was worthy of a penalty. The first one was a bit touch and go, I think.
The first one was fine. The second one is... I don't... It's kind of hit and miss. Ocon's argument was... Basically, it's when they're going into T1, and kind of like that wall comes out near the pit lane a bit, and Hamilton had just a bit on his inside, and Ocon kind of bumped him and didn't give him room into the wall, and his argument was, well, he wasn't even looking in his mirror there because he was focusing on his line, and he wasn't checking to see if Hamilton was there, and Hamilton was arguably just there enough, but it could have been a much bigger impact, so... Gotcha. I feel like it's one of the... Yeah, I don't know. Maybe because they already had the first incident, I can then see maybe the two of them together, maybe give him a bat in the back and go, okay, maybe you're being a bit rough out there, right? But in it, I don't know. As an incident by itself, I think it might have still been a little harsh. But the two of them together, as I said, I think it's fair.
Yeah, fair enough.
Ocon needed to learn some words from his mentor, the Minister of Spanish Defense. His teammate later on in the race. He clearly was lacking some skills there for defense from Hamilton.
We'll get to that. But yeah, as I was saying, I think the one of the highlights for me during that whole inters phase was Gasly on those intermediate tires. He was making an absolute charge through the field.
Yes.
Some of the overtakes that he was making in you already can't...
Everywhere.
Everywhere, exactly. Like, there's pretty much, like... Drivers always say there's, like, 2 overtaking opportunities, maybe 3, like, at the end of the straight. There's one before the sort of hairpin section, like, as you go
outside the tunnel,
just there. And then, like, at the end of the tunnel, and then I think just before, like, the last complex at the end, like last 2 corners.
Pit lane. Yeah,
that's about the only places you see overtakes, and he was just finding other corners to overtake. It was unreal racing. That was fun to watch. Gasly through there. I'm not biased at all. Gasly's
not biased.
Gasly's not one of my favorite drivers at all, and I always pay attention to him a lot more. But anyway, so moving on from the switch to inters is the switch to slicks. As we said, most went on to the inters at some point, but as we mentioned, Sainz stayed on the wet tires and went straight to the slicks. But the first person, I think, to go out on the hards, looks like I wrote down that Mick came out on the hards lap 19.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think it was Mick, yeah.
And that sort of, everyone then started to come in for the slicks.
Once they saw that he didn't crash, they were kind of like, okay, fair enough, let's do it. Obviously, this means it's going to be quicker again. But interesting as we'll probably get into, from what was a wet to into that looked like an undercut, interestingly, this kind of seemed like you could do a bit of an overcut, like the crossover wasn't directly there. It was much more interesting.
Yep. I wonder if because it's sort of a wet track and being the hard tires, I wonder if that tire temperature was just hard to, like, even if there was a dry line, just trying to get that temperature into the hards to put out a good
and then having
lap.
A much drier line even a few laps later means you can get it up so much quicker that you'd gain a lot more of that time you'd lose heating it up. Something like that,
Also, the fact that most drivers weren't out on those inters for very long means there was still a lot of life
pretty fresh, and they can run some.
They can push those. Yeah, they can put in like a massive lap that on tires that are already.
As long as the track is cold, those tires can still perform.
Yeah, that's it. So, but yeah, Mick came in, then Albon, Ricciardo, Zhou, Bottas, K-Mag, they all started to come in, and then Ferrari. They had a double stack, which, as it turns out, was something that was not planned.
Oopsie.
And my fourth point that I have here is the Ferrari master plan makes its grand return.
Yes.
The clown suits are back out, boys. But yeah, the Ferrari master plan ensures the Monaco curse remains. For Leclerc, but Leclerc was told to pit, and then as he's coming into the pits, he's like frantically told, stay out, and Leclerc comes in to the pits behind Sainz as they double stack, and then ends up in fourth after being in pole from qualifying, and ends up the worst of the four by the end of the pit stops. Yeah, it's not great. Not great.
Do you think he only just missed out on Verstappen? I have, again, you could put this down to FIA incompetency. I haven't specifically looked, but I've seen a lot of people saying that the Williams, God bless his heart, Latifi, the championship decider, once again putting his hand in the mix. I couldn't remember who was ahead of Sainz and who was ahead of Leclerc. Allegedly, they were both
Latifi,
very
Latifi
heavily.
Was ahead of Sainz, and he got held up on that.
Allegedly, they were both very, very heavily held up by them as back markers. I think one said there was like 8 blue flags, the other was 12 blue flags, and normally the rule is by the 4th or something. You have to give significant leverage to let them through if they're just behind you. Otherwise, you get bopped on the head.
I didn't realize it was that many, actually.
It's only a few, it's not many, It's
no, as in strict. I didn't realize it was like 8 or 12 that they were given.
Yes, they said for one, I don't remember which was which, but one of them it was like half a lap or something, and they said they were pretty significantly impacted. And as we saw when Max came out, and this is again was referring to before about Max maybe being a little cheeky, kind of only just popped out ahead as well. So there's an element of saying, hey, you reverse those roles, and then they're obviously going to be stuck there for the rest of the race. So bad pit call, and then unlucky, and then oh dear, and then they still had the rest of the race to run out, just sitting there, just fuming, going, I'll let you cover the rest of how that played out, though.
No, so so obviously they double stack. Obviously, I think the idea was that they were going to. I think the plan was to double stack them, but this was before they realized how much faster Leclerc was on those inters behind Sainz on those completely dead wets, and he was catching him so quickly that they wanted him to stay out and then go another lap on those tires, and then obviously do that overcut, which he probably would have ended up. I don't know where he would have ended
ahead
up.
Of Sainz and ahead of Max, and potentially even out in the lead of the race, right, as well.
Coming in that lap was a very, very costly mistake.
Well, it was nail in the coffin, wasn't it?
Yeah,
as soon as he
100%.
came in there, you went, "Oh, that's P4,
That's it.
done and dusted."
Yep. But yeah, the next lap, Red Bull do their double stack for the slicks as well. Perez, as we know, comes out ahead of Sainz, and Verstappen just out ahead of Leclerc. And yeah, I think Ferrari made investigations into whether or not they both crossed the pit exit line.
Pit exit, yeah.
They were both cleared. Again, you mentioned FIA incompetence. I think there was a little bit to do with that, because I think
I think this was when they mentioned something they clarified a few weeks ago, but then they didn't move it apparently forward in the notes.
Yes.
But I don't know. Even again, I seem to see a lot of pundit opinion kind of saying even with that carried forward, they saw it was kind of on the line, because I don't know enough about it, to be honest, but it seemed to generally be that even if that was carried forward, it seemed a little kind of hit and miss. I don't know enough to give my full call or opinion on it, but it was pretty quickly after the race dismissed after it was brought up. So obviously they were pretty confident in saying no, this is a nothing, right?
Yep. Yeah. So it is what it is. I think that the rule that they were carrying, the rule that Eduardo Freitas, who was the guy in charge,
head FIA man in charge. Race director.
Thank you. He had a 2021 version of the rule, like written word of the rule, which is probably why it was written so poorly. But yeah, apparently that's the discrepancy between what is the current rules and what the race director had laid out for the rules, I think, is what led to a lot of the confusion. Because he had, and the fact that I think there's this whole idea that the rules that the race director has supersedes what the I don't know. It was something weird, but they go off what the race director rules have. Regardless of what the overarching rules are, they go off what their rules are.
Well, the rules of the sport or that the teams have to go under and that.
Yeah, so, I don't know. It was all very confusing, obviously.
It's this whole they get the final call, final judgment thing, right? That's how they backed up backed up the massive decisions from last year, was saying it's still the final call lies there, right? So it's kind of again, whether they had the updated rule, I don't know if it would have made a difference. I haven't watched it, but I saw the race did put out a video, I think, actually analyzing it. So hey, go and watch that if you're interested. That might actually address it in better detail than we ever could. Still interesting, yeah.
But anyway, we'll move on to the rest of the race. We have Mick into the wall again, and that was when they cut to it. I thought it was bad. I thought it was really bad.
Shot and a half. You just saw a bit of a it looked like a kid's toy or something. It's like, what is that? Oh,
I was
just the rear bit of the car.
Legit in shock. They cut to it, and it's just like the car's in two halves, and I'm just sitting there like, oh no, this is bad.
Yes,
this is real bad. And then they cut away, and they did, like they do when they think it could be bad. They cut away, but it was very, very quick. That Mick was on the radio saying he's okay. Turns out he was pretty well unscathed after that. But he goes into the wall after what was another weird incident. I think maybe he just dipped into the wet line, maybe, and got on the throttle. Maybe just spun the car, but it was kind of a weird one. It seemed.
Yeah.
But, either way,
it almost seemed like he apparently got off throttle early, and that's what caused.
Oh,
the
that's
spin,
right. Yeah, it was like lift off oversteer or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the engine.
I
think they were talking about the engine braking or something. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Very, very strange, but he gets.
We didn't even cover. Oh, go on. Sorry.
No. If you wanna go back a couple of steps.
I was gonna say we didn't even cover the almighty save from Mr. Zhao.
Yeah.
How good was that? Man, fully entirely lost it. Echoes of, or was it Checo in 2012, I think, and yet somehow saved it and picked it up and carried on. That was amazing.
Yeah, that's some
go and
quality
watch that
car
if you haven't
control.
seen it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think there was it Science running behind.
Science allegedly had a few really good saves. I didn't remember them.
There was one.
I
think there was one down the pit straight. I think he was following Perez maybe, and he had one and he saved it going down the pit straight. And I think that was a real big one as well. A couple of really, really, really good saves from a couple of drivers.
Good driving out there amongst a bit of sloppy driving.
Yeah, it's almost like the 20 of the best drivers in the world, perhaps.
Yeah. Yes.
Anyway. But yeah, so Mick goes into the wall, completely destroys the car. Full safety car comes out. This is only lap 27, by the way. We're not even half distance. By lap 30, they throw the red flag to repair the barrier. Thankfully, it was a Tech Pro barrier, which is why Mick was not that hurt. He didn't go into a metal barrier, thank God. But it left us with an interesting prospect. And this is the next point I've got, which is the restart, but it left us with this interesting prospect in that both, for lack of a better term, both the number 2 drivers in the team were ahead of both number 1 drivers, and they were also, Ferrari and Red Bull also chose different strategies in terms of tires as well. It was a really intriguing sort of phase where you're thinking, oh, is there what could happen here? And sort of there was a few imaginations. Will they try and do some kind of team orders, or will they let them race? Are the mediums going to just be that much faster? Or particularly the fact that I think Ferrari were both on like 10-lap old hards, and both Red Bulls were on completely fresh mediums. Turns out the mediums were just not even... You couldn't get away with the mediums. They were basically the same speed.
That was the first thing Christian Horner was after the race. We said, why'd you go to the mediums? And I think they thought that at the start they just really need to make 100,000% sure that they could cover off the Ferraris. And then once they're actually moving, they thought there was no way they could lose it after that, regardless of how bad the wear got. So I guess off of that, they kind of made the right call, but I guess for us as viewers, it at least kept it tense, right? Which was nice once they started to really fall off.
Yep. Yeah. So I think it was, by the time we got to the restart, it was a timed race, by the way. We didn't end up getting the 77 laps?
Yes, I forgot, because that's why it kind of felt like there was so many laps to go, but it wasn't that long. They pretty quickly converted it to half hour, I think, when there was half hour left.
Something like that, yeah. So we had a timed race, so basically just had to run out the time. But after that restart, we this entire race, it's been super, super interesting. Lots of strategy, the wet to dry. And then we get what is my final point, which is the true Sunday Monaco experience.
Yes.
In a couple of... There's two sort of parts that I'm going to focus on here. But let's start from P7 down.
Yes.
It's a timely reminder that we're still at Monaco. Alonso is in P7. Turns out he was going... He was also on those mediums, I think, as well, wasn't he? But he was going 3 to 4 seconds a lap slower than Perez out in front. He was, by the end of the race, even though there was only like half an hour left, there was this idea that they're going to get lapped. Like, if they keep going this slowly, they are going to get lapped by these top drivers if they keep going this slowly.
Yes.
Hamilton, despite the fact that he was getting extremely frustrated and that every single person behind Alonso, like I'm talking even like 10 laps into this restart, it was Alonso and then it was P7 down to like P18 and it was just one long train. He was going that slowly.
They initially strung out a bit and then he kind of was just keeping it nice and steady in safety eddy. And then it cut to a point of the track map showing where everyone was. And there was kind of the top 4 of them in the last sector. And then it was Norris and Ocon that were kind of like further down, I think it was, right?
Norris and Russell, right? They were
Norris and Russell, sorry, yes, it was Norris and Russell. And then this massive gap to then basically your classic F1 2021 gamer using infinite flashbacks around Monaco with placed his wing 10 times, with the entire field just in a tiny multicolored snake on the track map.
Yeah.
And as you say, near the end, kind of part of the chatter seemed to be, well, hey, actually, these guys are catching this train here. This could be a little interesting. It wasn't that long ago. What was it? Maybe I think it was the mid 2010s or something when we had it was early 2010s, so we had a quite an intense battle for the lead, and they came across an intense battle in the midfield, and then it ended up being that a car got shot into the barrier, and it was all sorts of chaos because the two fights kind of came together. And we thought a bit, is this going to happen again? Are they going to sort it out? Are they going to be well behaved here? So it did add a little bit of spice there
a little
with
bit,
that train.
yeah.
But it was considering that Hamilton was all over Ocon earlier on, the fact that Hamilton seemed to be going even slower, and he basically didn't even get an attempt on him. You heard Hamilton going, "Oh, this guy's moving around, man," but nothing came from it.
And Alonso
was so comfortable.
He came out after the race and he was like, I'm paraphrasing, but it was like, it was very easy to keep Hamilton behind.
Yes.
See, this is the problem I have with Monaco. Despite the fact that it's been a great race, he can go 4 seconds a lap slower and
than the guys in front of him.
And he says it's very easy to keep the drivers that can go probably at least 3.5 seconds faster than him.
Yep.
It's like, no, it's easy to keep him behind. It's like, this is why we don't like Sunday Monaco. At least we had a good race up to that point.
Yeah, I know. And he actually had pace there because near the end, when Ocon was revealed to have that penalty, he was in that train. They came on the radio saying, hey, by the way, your teammate's further down here, and he's going to get a 5-second penalty.
Does the fastest lap.
And then he did pick up the pace a lot, so he obviously had it there, but he's like, I have no need to go faster, which is fair enough. He knows he's not going to challenge for Norris and Russell. He's happy with the spot that he's in. Again, he's had a torrid season to this point. Banked the bloody points, mate.
Oh, yeah. I don't blame him. I don't blame him at all. Absolutely.
No,
if that's the strategy that you think, this is the best position I'm going to save these tyres for as long as I can, so that way they don't. As it turns out, I think he was on those mediums, that he made the right choice, because those mediums by the end of the race, as Perez showed, they went off quite hard. And then once he picked up the pace, he set a fastest lap, showed that actually no, he can still go fast. He was just holding back to save those tires. But it's a fair strategy. It just kind of shows Monaco's weaknesses on a Sunday again, unfortunately. So, but that was from P7 down. We had P6. We had Norris sort of running his own race. I think he wanted to push up to Russell. He came on the radio saying, I can push, and never really kind of got even anywhere close enough to be able to push up to Russell.
He wanted to push, and his team kind of said, keep it safe. He said, well, what's the bloody point? He made a bit of progress, but I think they realized that wasn't going to do anything, so they actually boxed him to give him a fresh set of boots.
That's right, yep.
And he actually was closing by a ridiculous amount, where you saw over the line, he actually was right behind Russell, despite being like 4 seconds behind the previous lap. I think we saw, which you might touch on, is that because they were working to time, Checo seemed to actually be slowing them up a bit to have one less time under the race.
Yes.
And they were saying that if Norris had that extra time with that such a colossal advantage, he probably could have actually made it past Russell, because he was absolutely flying there, probably doing quali laps while he was out there. And I think he actually, in the end of the race, did get the fastest lap point, right?
I think he did, yeah.
So, showing that he was pushing really hard. We didn't see much of it, but certainly that gap was,
coming down,
yeah.
But, anyway, out in front, obviously we had Russell P5, and then the top four, all still very, very close, thanks to, again, like I alluded to earlier, Perez couldn't get away on those medium tires because they just weren't quite as strong as maybe they thought they were going to be on that restart, even though they were fresh mediums to 10-lap-old hards. He just absolutely could not get away. So Sainz stuck with him, and then Max and Leclerc they were just kind of in their own little train along here. And then Perez, his mediums just started to go. He just started losing pace, and Sainz started to get very, very close. And everyone else behind him, but as it turns out, it's Monaco, so it ended in the same four. It doesn't matter how slow you go, apparently, as Alonso showed. It just kind of ended that way. It was a little bit exciting, thinking, oh, will he try and send one here? Because obviously he was quite a bit faster, but really, was he gonna try and send one? On Perez. Perez is quite good at defending, as we've seen in recent history. I just don't know if it was ever a possibility, unfortunately. So, but yeah, Perez takes his third win of his career, his first win this year. So
makes him the most successful Mexican driver in terms of wins as well.
Yeah.
And part of why he was bawling his eyes out in the podium, which is cute to see.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's we kind of got a bit of everything. We got the rain, the changeover, the strategy, the Ferrari master plan, and the true Sunday Monaco experience for people who missed that from every other year. So, that was Monaco. Will it be the last time we see it? That's a loaded question.
Might go into a bit of that in our podcast.
Yeah. Well, this entire video is just a plug for the podcast. Go listen to that.
This is just chapter 1 of 3.
Yeah,
the Monaco Grand Prix.
Oh my goodness. But I mean, to be honest, I was expecting a lot less from Monaco on the Sunday. So the fact that we got what we did, I think it was, relatively speaking, I think it was a great race. So
yep.
Yeah, I don't know if you had any other thoughts, but that's pretty much all I've got.
No, I think it was ironic that the one bit of action near the end, that, again, very similar to last year, except there was less because of a cutaway,
and we didn't
was
see
when we saw the back markers did end up coming through the front runners did end up coming through 2 back markers.
That's right.
I believe it was Zhao and was it Latifi who was fighting?
I think it was.
Latifi, yes. And we saw Zhao first let them through, and then Latifi did. And actually in the back end, you could see that Zhao and Latifi were then going side by side outside of T1. But of course, they just wanted to focus on the leaders. So you kind of saw it in the background, and then you didn't see it, and you kind of heard the commentators going, "Oh, it looks like he hasn't got it well." But then again, it was another run up that hill side by side that we didn't get to see. And I'm like, old habits die hard. God damn it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. The broadcast. I mean, a lot of this, I feel like Monaco has it pretty bad, but I found out through the broadcast is that Monaco is special in that they do it through their local broadcasting systems. So, which I think is why they have a lot of the issues that they do.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. That said, I think it was a good weekend overall. Definitely, if we didn't have that rain, it would be probably a lot more boring, and chances are Leclerc would have romped out ahead, and there you go, there's the race. But we got some excitement, and I think that was pretty much all you can ask for from a Monaco race.
I think so.
In 2022. So, but yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the race. Let us know your thoughts. Do you think Monaco stay around? Did you enjoy the race? Who do you think is title favorite at the moment? Is it still Max and Leclerc, or is Perez sticking his nose in there now?
Yes.
I don't know. It's a very, very interesting kind of dynamic I think we have at the moment. Leading into, we got Baku next. Oh, but it's a great track. Ferrari. Ferrari. Red Bull are I think traditionally pretty strong there. So yeah, that'll be a good one. But yeah, stay tuned for our Baku preview. That one will be coming out. And then, like I said, stay tuned for our...
You jinxed it now.
And then, yeah, stay tuned for our podcast. That's going to be the next one coming up, this weekend for Spotify, and then mid next week for YouTube as well. But, yeah, if you haven't already, if you're on YouTube, hit like, subscribe, tell your friends. We've got a few subscribers. I think we broke 50 subscribers, which is kind of neat. That kind of came out of nowhere. But yeah, if you're listening on Spotify, remember to follow. You'll see all our things in the feed, and then you can listen when you want, and you get the podcast upcoming a few days early as well. But again, just want to thank everyone for listening or watching, and yeah, we'll see you, or you'll hear us in the next recording or the next video. Take care, everyone.
Ciao.